Spherical buildings are some of the coolest and most unique structures out there. They push the limits of what architecture can do. From gigantic planetariums to futuristic event spaces, these massive spheres are turning heads all over the world. So let's get the ball rolling. Here are the 15 biggest sphere buildings in the world. Number 15. La Geode. Paris is best known for its historic buildings and its monuments, but one new building that's recently grabbed headlines is La Geode. This mirror-finished sphere comes in at a sizable 36 meters in diameter, and it holds an Omnimax theater. Fitted with a large sound system, it plays science, nature, and travel documentaries, short and long feature-length films, and high-definition animated movies using IMAX, 4DX, and Dolby Cinema technologies. Number 14. The Oriental Pearl Tower. So of all the entries on this list, none give off that futuristic vibe quite like the Oriental Pearl Tower. It's located in the Chinese city of Shanghai, and it held the title of being the tallest structure in China until the completion of the World Financial Center in 2007. This strange tower has two spheres, with each being about 50 meters long and having an observation deck, and this in turn makes the Oriental Pearl Tower a favorite spot for tourists looking to get a great view of the skyline. Number 13. The Nagoya City Science Museum. If you travel to the Japanese city of Nagoya, you can't miss the Nagoya City Science Museum. While home to plenty of cool exhibits, its defining feature is that massive sphere-shaped planetarium. Coming in at 35 meters in diameter, it's made out of about 700 panels joined together into a perfect sphere. Inside, there are 350 reclining seats, all of which can rotate freely, and this in turn helps make the viewing experience extraordinary. And given the fact that it's the world's largest planetarium, it's definitely worth visiting. Number 12. The Kazakhstan Pavilion and Science Museum. While Kazakhstan may be best known for its associations with Borat, it also deserves some credit for being home of the Kazakhstan Pavilion and Science Museum. Built as the centerpiece for an expo back in 2017, it's a pure glass sphere that comes in at an impressive 80 meters in diameter, making it the third largest sphere on the planet. Inside, there's a central atrium, multiple passenger elevators, and several floors of museum and exhibition space, making it a great place to check out if you ever travel to the Kazakh capital of Astana. Number 11. The Peachoid. While Georgia may be known as the Peach State, border state South Carolina also picks its share of this sweet fruit. And of all of them, the Peachoid is South Carolina's largest. It's located in the small rural town of Gaffney. This 135-meter tall building has a pedestal at the bottom and a giant peach on top. While shaped like a conventional water tower, its top is a bit different than most. While this strange look gets a lot of attention, it also serves a useful purpose. After all, it holds nearly 4 million liters of water. Number 10. The Free Spirit Spheres. So when you think of a treehouse, a wooden house-like building is probably what comes to your mind. However, the Free Spirit Spheres takes that classic design and completely turns it on its head. Located along Canada's west coast on Vancouver Island, the spheres function as both comfortable living spaces and works of art. Designed in relation to the philosophy of biomimicry, these spheres try to reflect the nature around them, and despite being very modern, they more or less manage to do so. After all, the spherical shape of the balls is modeled after that of a tree nut, with the foundational idea being that the design is very durable against external pressures. In order to keep the sphere in place, it's tethered to the strong points of 3 separate trees using vertical ropes. Now, this is important because it helps distribute the load of the spheres evenly, resulting in a stable hang that doesn't cause swaying from side to side when there's wind. Now, the Free Spirit Spheres are not private residences, rather they're rented out as hotel rooms, and those interested have 3 options to choose from: Melody, Erin, and Luna. Melody is the original sphere, crafted with a yellow fiberglass exterior and a black walnut interior. It measures in at 3.2 meters in diameter and sports 5 windows with a small sink, a Murphy bed, and a kettle. The Erin is the second of the two, and it's quite similar to the Melody. However, its interior is made of Sitka pine rather than black walnut, and it's a bit more accommodating because it can sleep a third person, and it has a fridge. However, it's the Luna that's the newest and most luxurious of the 3, as it's got the best design elements and features from her predecessors. Best of all 3 spheres have running water, Wi-Fi, and power, making them pretty comfortable despite not being anything like your typical house or hotel room. So it should come as a little surprise that many people want to spend a night here in these spheres, especially since they're some of the only spherical tree houses on the planet. However, at a price point of between $250 and $300 a night, you're gonna have to pay a pretty penny in order to stay there. Number 9. The Montreal Biosphere. Montreal, it's easily one of Canada's most dynamic cities, and in 1967, it became the site of a lot of action when it decided to host Expo 67. This event was grand in scale. It was a World's Fair. It was held with an aim to showcase the 20th century's greatest human achievements. Hosting 62 countries and hundreds of thousands of visitors, it brought the city to life, and at the center of it all was an incredible structure known as the Montreal Biosphere. Built to host the United States' section of the fair, it was dressed to impress, and coming in at 76 meters in diameter, it was absolutely massive, and it was able to be so grand in scale thanks to funding from the United States Travel Service and the Smithsonian Institution. Inside were several exhibits meant to showcase American achievement. At the top of the sphere was Destination Moon. This was an ode to NASA and included spacecraft such as Freedom 7, Gemini 7, and Apollo capsules. On the mezzanine level, the American Spirit exhibit displayed a wide variety of artifacts including Native American items, folk art, guitars owned by famous musicians, and an array of hats representing different regions and occupations. Other attractions included a gallery of Hollywood memorabilia, a painting display, and a 300-seat theater showing, of all things, American schoolchildren in a playground. To keep visitors comfortable, a complex system of shades was used to control the internal temperature. Now, the idea behind this was that the shades would work in a similar way to the human body, using so-called pores to regulate the enclosed system. However, these pores didn't end up working, and in the end, maintenance teams simply stopped using them. Despite that shortcoming, though, the Biosphere was a hit, and once Expo 67 was over, the United States donated it to the city of Montreal. From there, it periodically changed uses. However, this quickly came to a halt when in 1976 the building caught on fire. Sparked by a welding crew during structural renovations, the fire burned away the building's transparent acrylic bubble, leaving only the hard steel frame intact. While various uses were suggested, nothing gained any traction, and ultimately it would sit unused until 1990. In August of that year, Environment Canada committed about $17 million to turn the Biosphere into an interactive museum, showcasing and exploring the water ecosystems of the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence River regions. Ever since, it showcased exhibits about environmental issues related to water, climate change, air, ecotechnologies, and sustainable development. Number 8. The Apple Sphere. If you head to Hong Kong's Marina Bay Sands Resort, you can see an Apple store that's like no other. Floating atop the water, this spherical store is 30 meters long and made up of 114 glass panels that sit atop an existing concrete foundation. Designed by Foster & Partners, it was made to be a centerpiece of the resort and a marvel of human engineering. As put by senior executive partner Stefan Beilig, it's sort of an igloo. It's all structural glass with very thin polished stainless steel ribs, which seem to dematerialize, and obviously no columns, which more or less goes without saying these days. You won't find anything with a more delicate structure probably in the world. Well, now, despite basically being a glass bubble, it has certain things in place to make sure it doesn't become too hot, bright, or noisy. First thing, the sphere makes use of a series of interior baffles. These triangular wedges are around the sphere and arranged in horizontal rings. They can be adjusted based on the amount of light hitting them and help shade the dome from heat while also bouncing some light upwards. This creates an impressive diffuse light effect. These baffles, which are filled with foam and coated with fabric, also serve another function, smoothing out what could have been disturbingly harsh acoustics. In fact, the baffles were, as put by Mr. Bailing, obsessively modeled on computers and then tested with full-scale mock-ups to ensure effectiveness. Well, to assist the baffles, the sphere also has a 3-meter oculus on top of the dome. Now, this creates a sploosh of light that can be meticulously tracked. According to Bailing, they have the calculations so down to the nose that he can tell you exactly where that splooge of light will be at any time of the day, any time of year. Well, once you're finished shopping at Apple, the concrete foundation houses a lower floor. Now, this links to an entrance within the Marina Bay Sands shopping mall. Reaching the bubble from the basement requires 2 escalators, and Foster & Partners have worked on making that journey as theatrical as possible. As put by Bailing, there really is a dramatic sequence. You come into a quite compressed store in the lower level, which has the display tables which feel familiar, but then you realize there's a glow at the end, and you see these escalators which travel through a quite magical polished stainless steel tunnel, which creates a crazy kaleidoscopic effect, and then you enter this very spectacular space. It's definitely not a store where you'll say, yeah, I've seen that before. Well, now, while this glass ball may seem a bit extravagant, it's actually intended to add something a little calmer to the cluttered and chaotic Singapore skyline. However, whether or not it actually does that is up for debate. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think? Moving on to number 7, the Republic of Mugal. Out of all the spheres on this list, the only one that claims to be its own country is the so-called Republic of Mugal, located in the small Austrian town of Katzeldorf. The 7.7-meter-long sphere was constructed by a father and son duo, Edwin and Nicholas Lippberger, in 1971. Built using timber blocks and zinc sheets, for a while it served as a painter's studio. But that all came to an end when suddenly local authorities let the Lippbergers know that the spherical buildings were not allowed. In an attempt to protect their creation from being demolished, the Lippbergers got creative, declaring their sphere to be a micronation. They named it the Republic of Mugal and got to work giving it the trappings of a sovereign country. Complete with unique self-made street signs and, as the dispute escalated, its own stamps and currency, and what was once a protest became eventually a serious legal matter. Eventually, the Lippbergers stopped paying property taxes, and in 1979, the eldest Lippberger was put in jail for 10 weeks for the offense of putting up unapproved street signs. Well, in 1982, the building was taken apart and transported to Vienna. Located within the city's anti-fascism square, it was officially adopted by the city of Vienna by the then mayor Helmut Zilk, who granted the object political asylum and allowed the Lippbergers to use it. At this point, it was assumed by the city that the artistic object would only be temporary. On the part of the Lippbergers, they believed that it would be receiving water, electricity, and sewers, all of which didn't happen. Soon, a legal dispute between the Lippbergers and the city of Vienna ensued, and various lawsuits have been filed. Despite all this, though, all of the lawsuits have failed without a resolution, and no formal agreement was ever reached between Lippberger and the city. However, an informal deal has been reached. The city has stopped trying to reclaim the sphere and has accepted it as part of Vienna's culture, allowing it to be the only building in the city to exist without a permit. Now, really the key to understanding Mugal is that its foundation as a republic wasn't just an attempt to prevent the demolition of it, but an artistic intervention and an act of resistance. This, in turn, has made it quite famous, and the sphere has gotten its fair share of visitors. While the elder Lippberger passed away in 2015, the micronation can still be visited, as his son has taken over the management of the nation. And while the Republic's borders were closed during the COVID-19 pandemic, it reopened to visitors once more in June of 2024. If you decide to visit, you're in for quite an experience. After all, for a fee, visitors can view the artistic nation and even get issued a pretend visa permit with a stamp and a signature on it. So if you're in Vienna and you want to see a tourist attraction that's a bit off the beaten path, I'd suggest giving the Mugal a visit. Number 6. Spaceship Earth. Disney World is easily one of the world's most iconic theme parks, and Spaceship Earth is an especially iconic spot within the Epcot area of the park. Heavily inspired by the sphere built by the Americans in Montreal to celebrate that Expo 67, it improved upon the original concept. Unlike the Montreal structure, Spaceship Earth is a complete sphere, supported by 3 pairs of legs. It's also completely enclosed, being covered in about 11,000 triangles that, when combined, technically make this sphere a 3,840-point object. Well, besides looking cool, they also have an important structural purpose. You see, when it rains, the triangles ensures that no water pours off the sides onto the ground. Instead, all of the water is collected through small gaps in the triangles and flows into a gutter system. Now, while the whole thing looks like one structure, it's actually 2 structural domes, with each being completely separate despite looking attached. Once you're inside, you're treated to one of the best rides that Disney has to offer. The 15-minute ride takes guests on a time machine-themed experience, demonstrating how advancements in human communication have helped to create the future one step at a time. The ride starts by showing scenes from the development of early language, then moves on to cave paintings, next to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and then onto the alphabet, later to the printing press, and finally to today's modern communications, including telecommunication, mass communication, and the internet. While the theme of communication has been a constant since its opening in 1982, it's been updated about 3 times, once in '86, another time in '94, and a third in 2007. A 4th time will likely be sometime in the next few years, however the plan to do so was put on hold indefinitely because of COVID. In a statement, a spokesperson for Disney said, quote, "As with most businesses during this period, we are further evaluating long-term project plans. The decision was made to postpone the development of the Mary Poppins-inspired attraction and Spaceship Earth at this time." End quote. Well, however, as of now, there is a belief that it will be updated after popular rides such as the test track are finished with refurbishments. And it's also worth mentioning that for a few years, Spaceship Earth had an interesting addition. In order to celebrate the year 2000, a 25-story tall magic wand held by Mickey Mouse's hand was built next to the sphere. While it was an interesting, if somewhat eclectic addition, the decision was made to remove it in 2007 for the theme park's 25th anniversary. It was rumored that Siemens AG, the new sponsor of Spaceship Earth, requested the wand be removed as it didn't fit their corporate image. However, to date, I'm not entirely sure why it's been taken down. However, at the very least, Disney managed to profit off of it. After all, components of the wand structure were later auctioned off on eBay. Number 5. The Amazon Spheres. Amazon. It's one of the world's largest companies, and it's because of the large budget their work allows for that they were able to create some interesting buildings at their HQ. Chief among them are the Amazon Spheres. Located at their Seattle headquarters, they are, in essence, 3 glass domes that serve as an employee lounge and workspace. However, thanks to some special features, the Amazon Spheres kick things up a notch. First and foremost, each dome is covered in 180 elongated pentagonal modules inspired by the work of Belgian mathematician Eugene Charles Catalan. Ranging from 24 to 29 meters in height, they use over 2,600 panes of glass and 560 tons of steel. And while the materials put into the building are incredible, it's the inside that truly impresses. Housing a cafeteria, stairway, elevators, and bathrooms, it's got all the essentials, alongside meeting spaces, tables, and benches, all of which can seat a total of about 800 people. The stairwell's covered by a 4-story living wall with over 25,000 plants, and while this is impressive in its own right, Amazon really went all out with its plant offering. In total, the spheres have about 40,000 plants from 50 different countries, and they're divided into several areas, with the western and eastern domes segregated into the Old World and New World. These plants were specifically grown for the building by a horticulturalist who worked on the project full-time for over a 3-year period at a specifically designated greenhouse. For example, there's a massive 17-meter-tall fig tree named Ruby, an incredible Titum arum corpse flower named Morticia that only blooms once every few years, and a taller corpse flower named Bellatrix that acts in a similar fashion. In order to keep all growing conditions optimal, the domes are kept at a temperature of 22 degrees Celsius, and all in all, they provide a great environment for those special species to grow. What's interesting about this HQ is that despite Amazon's negative press, many people seem to appreciate the building. It's got a futuristic feel that matches with the style and ethos of the city, and the building is well placed given its proximity to the famous Seattle Space Needle. And while many Seattle natives will tell you that there are better gardens in the city for a corporate headquarters, the Amazon Spheres aren't half bad. Now, it is worth noting that while the complex is usually closed off to allow Amazon employees to enjoy the space in peace, they are open to the public on the first and third Saturday of each month. They're completely free to visit, and while you have to book in advance, the only restriction is that you can only stay for 1 hour. This makes them a cool thing to check out on a visit to Seattle. Number 4. The Marium Globe. While technically not a building in its own right, this strange sphere gets a spot on this list due to its impressive size and design. In the early 1930s, Boston architect Chester Lindsay Churchill was commissioned to design the new Christian Science Publishing Society HQ. This was in a bid to compete with the other grand newspaper headquarters of the day, that is, the rival New York Daily News building. At this point in time, the building stood apart for having a gigantic spinning globe. In response, the Christian Science Monitor wanted to create something even grander. It was this ambition that brought us the Marium Globe. Coming in at a sizable 3 stories tall, this inside-out stained glass globe is not only large, but also intersected in the middle with a glass walkway. In the past, hundreds of lamps would illuminate it for visitors to enjoy, but now it glows with the help of some LEDs. Now, what's cool about this is the unique depiction of the planet that gives visitors a rare chance to see the world in a way that doesn't distort the surface of the Earth. You see, even when looking at the accurate globe, the relative sizes of the continents are distorted by perspective. This is because with the spherical shape, it causes different regions to appear at different distances from the eye. But with a view from the very center of the globe looking out, the eye is in the same distance from every point on the map, and this in turn makes it a far more accurate visual representation. When looking at a globe in this way, the face of it completely changes. Africa is huge, and North America, Europe, and Asia are all jammed up against the North Pole. In fact, it is common for countries near the equator to look smaller, and for those higher north to look larger on a regular map or globe. However, from this perspective, everything looks how it should. Now, it is worth mentioning that while the relative size and position of the continents are correct, the map's political boundaries are long out of date. The Marium Globe hasn't changed since 1935, meaning that now-defunct states such as Siam, French Indochina, and the USSR remain. However, newer additions such as the Czech Republic and Indonesia are not present. But the most curious part about this exhibit is the acoustics. When you stand at the center of this perfect sphere, you can hear your voice in full 360-degree surround sound. Unlike in most spheres, these curved glass walls don't absorb the sound waves, but they reflect them back. And as a result, even those whispering in one end of the bridge can hear someone perfectly clear on the opposite edge. This effect has led to it being called a whispering gallery, and it surely led to some secret info being accidentally shared. Well, if you want a ticket for yourself, ticket prices come in at a rather reasonable $6, making a trip here worth it if you're in the Boston area. Number 3. The Sphere. Vegas is known for having big, flashy attractions, and few grab the attention quite like the Sphere. It's located at the famous Venetian resort. Sphere stands apart for being the most impressive entertainment venue on the Strip. Coming in at a massive 157 meters in length and holding over 18,600 spectators, it cost a whopping $2.3 billion to build. This makes it the most expensive building in all of Las Vegas. Yet, while the price tag may have been high, the Sphere has a lot of capability. First and foremost, its exterior is incredible. It features over 580,000 square feet of LED displays. It's on these screens that the Sphere projects impressive images, with these including celestial bodies such as the Earth, Mars, and the Moon, to create unique images such as emojis and shaking snow globes. Once inside, visitors are treated to an interior that has an incredible 160,000 square foot 16K resolution LED screen. Now, this makes it both the largest and highest resolution LED screen in the world, and it's on these screens that various things are broadcast. Daily, there's a show called The Sphere Experience, which is on display. It's an interactive immersive show that includes a humanoid robot, avatar captures, and a holographic image, and a film by Darren Aronofsky. The show lasts about an hour and 35 minutes and has some cool 4D features such as scent and wind. If you get run-of-the-mill tickets, you can expect to fork over about $130, which is a pretty steep price for a daily show. However, if you want the VIP experience, you can buy the so-called director's seats. Now, those come in at about $300 each and give you a bit more value. After all, not only are the seats better, but you get access to some interesting extras. Now, those include a pre-show lounge featuring a sampling of beer, wine, soda, and snacks, a complimentary VIP lanyard, a collector's cup, and a custom director t-shirt. The Sphere has also hosted concerts for several big-name artists. So far, these have included U2, Fish, Dead & Company, and the Eagles. However, since the Sphere has only been open for a little while, I'm sure more will be on the roster as time goes on. And it's also worth noting that despite the cool effects and the great experience, the Sphere has gotten a fair bit of criticism. While visually stunning, many say that the show is not worth the money, and that its eco-friendly message itself is a bit hypocritical given the fact that the Sphere takes a lot of energy to power up. Vegas already has a lot of venues for special events, with its premier offerings including the T-Mobile Arena, Allegiant Stadium, and the MGM Grand or Toshiba Plaza. Given the fact that the Sphere is a very niche venue, perhaps its allure won't be large enough to bring in the tourist dollars. Yet, despite its problems, what is clear is that the Sphere is an impressive architectural marvel. Number 2. Avicii Arena. Sweden is known for its music, furniture, and status as a poster child for social democracy. Yet perhaps one thing that it doesn't get enough credit for is the Avicii Arena. Coming in at 110 meters in diameter, it was considered to be the world's largest sphere until the Vegas Sphere overtook it in 2023. Yet despite losing its record only recently, this arena has been around for a while. First constructed in 1989, it was known as the Ericsson Globe for most of its life, only being renamed Avicii Arena in honor of the famous DJ in 2021. In terms of events, it hosts just about anything under the sun, including hockey matches, concerts, and other mass events such as the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, while it's served its purpose well, it's also been facelifted. After all, it spent much of 2024 being renovated in anticipation of the 2025 Hockey World Championships. But there's another thing that's unique about the Avicii Arena, unbeknownst to many. It's at the center of the world's largest scale model of the solar system. Avicii Arena serves as the Sun. Smaller spheres representing the planets are found elsewhere. The scale is 1 to 20 million and features planets found across Stockholm, its suburbs, and for further off planets, other parts of Sweden. Models of comets, dwarf planets, and other pieces of space rock are found throughout the neighborhood too. Yet, for the sake of keeping things simple, we'll focus on the main planets. Thankfully, most of them have Stockholm addresses. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter are all located within the city limits. Mercury is just outside Stockholm City Museum and comes in at a tiny 25 centimeters in diameter. Venus is located at the Royal Institute of Technology and comes in at a slightly larger 62 centimeters. The Earth is at the Swedish Museum of Natural History and comes in at a similar 65 centimeters. Mars is on the upper level of a shopping center and subway station in Stockholm and comes in at about 35 centimeters. Jupiter, which is far larger than the rest, comes in at 7.3 meters. However, it's a bit farther afield and it's located inside the Clarion Hotel at Stockholm Arlanda Airport. Uranus is located in the town of Lofstabruck, Neptune in the coastal town of Söderhamn, and Pluto near the village center of Delsbo. From there, more objects can be found further afield. The farthest away is the Swift-Tuttle Comet, which is located about 380 kilometers away from the Avicii Arena. Now, if you were listening carefully, you may notice that I didn't mention one planet, Saturn. You see, in the city of Uppsala, the plan was to build a Saturn-shaped dome over the planetarium of a local school. However, the funding fell through, and today the ringed planet is represented by a simple flower carpet. Well, while it's disappointing, given how impressive the rest of the system is, I wouldn't give the Swedes too much flack for it. Now, this whole thing may have you wondering exactly what put the solar system into motion. Well, the concept for a Swedish solar system was born in the late 1990s. The story goes that a professor was cycling past what is now Avicii Arena and wondered how big and how far the planets would need to be if it represented the Sun. This led to a concerted effort to make the solar system. Originally, the plan was to make the solar system stop at Jupiter. However, in a truly remarkable way, the idea was taken up by schools, scientific institutions, and other organizations further afield, and this has led to the Sweden solar system to become the amazing two-scale solar network that it is today. Number 1. The Trilon and Perisphere. While most of the spheres on this list are still standing, the Trilon and Perisphere are one of the few to no longer be around. Built to be the center of the 1939 New York World Fair, this display consisted of a tall, needle-like obelisk structure and a sphere. Built in keeping with the fair's theme of the world of tomorrow, it was part of what was meant to be a utopian city of the future. Those who entered the sphere viewed it from above on a moving sidewalk, where a multi-image slide presentation was projected on the dome of the sphere. For an admission price of just 25 cents, this presentation showed an ideal future city. Every 6 minutes, a recorded narration would extol the wonders of this utopian city, and the lights would dim to mimic the nighttime as phosphorescent paint made the buildings look like they were lighting up from the inside. The narration was accompanied by the theme song of Rising Tide by William Grant Still, making it an immersive experience. After finishing the show, visitors exited the Perisphere by descending to the ground level on the helicline. This in essence was a 290-meter-long spiraled escalator. For the standards of the time, it was an architectural marvel, and it received rave reviews from the press. The Perisphere also used a few interesting visual techniques. For example, the building had 8 relatively small pylons for support. Now, while this could have been a problem, they were expertly hidden by using strategically placed fountains and mirrors. This made the Perisphere look like it was floating, giving it an extra futuristic look. The exterior was also made using some cool technology. At night, moving images of clouds were projected from nearby exhibit buildings onto the Perisphere. Now, at first, this proved to be a problem. After all, the amount of light needed to project the images would have burned through regular film. To fix this, the film slides were enclosed in glass and projected using a new type of projector with a custom-designed battery and super long focus lens. But it is also worth noting that not everything went to plan here. You see, the building was plagued by budget constraints, and this forced the design to not be the perfect, minimalist building that had been in mind. You see, the original plans for the Perisphere called for it to be covered in a smooth and seamless layer of concrete. However, due to the high cost of that material, gypsum was used instead. Well, unfortunately, despite the best efforts of the builders to smooth it out, the gypsum created an uneven texture and had visible seams. To make matters worse, surrounding fountains evaporated layers of mist that damaged the fragile coating, forcing the arches of the water to be lowered to prevent any serious aesthetic problems. Well, despite any issues, the Perisphere was ultimately a hit and soon found itself on stamps, merchandise, and other memorabilia. However, like most of what was at the fair, it didn't last forever. While popular when it opened in 1939 and 1940, overall attendance lagged far behind the previous year. This was a problem because it meant that the sphere operated at a loss, and as a result, in 1941, demolition began. The resulting scrap material was then sold to make armaments for World War II. Now, while that may sound like a sad ending, there is a silver lining to this story. You see, in 1964, New York hosted another World Fair. In keeping with tradition, they put up another sphere where the Perisphere once stood, this time a model of the Earth known as the Unisphere. While far smaller than the original, it is a pretty cool sight, and it's worth visiting if you live in or around New York City. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.